Welcome back, sailors. This is your host, the Captain, and welcome back to Bruise News. We got two welcome backs because welcome back. Welcome back. Now there's four. First of all, I have to apologize because apparently I had mixed up the dates, and the UFC card with DC versus Stipe Miocic is actually happening on the 17th of August and not this weekend, so we have a completely different card to look at. I do have the predictions down in front of me. I'm going to do the three fights that I think most people are going to be looking at to watch and that are going to be favorable. Before I get into that, I just wanted to say so there was a bunch of rumors about Goldberg coming back again after his terrible SummerSlam, or no, it was it the Saudi Arabian match when they were in Saudi Arabia against The Undertaker? Yeah, I think it was that pay-per-view. He just had this horrendous match with The Undertaker, like two of the oldest possible big men you could find, and they just had this slow match. Like at one point, Goldberg tried to pick up The Undertaker, and he couldn't even lift him up, and then The Undertaker just called for the match to be over. It was just one of those really weird events, but Saudi Arabia paid the WWE a fuckload of money to put on that event, and they got so many big superstars to come back, and it was just super expensive all over the place. So one of the matches that they really wanted to see was The Undertaker versus Goldberg, and that match just ended up being horrendous. So I didn't really think that after that Goldberg was going to try and mount another comeback, because after that terrible performance you had last time, I don't see a reason for you to come back and have another one. I feel like that's when you say, like, maybe I'm done with this. Or maybe he goes and hits the gym harder and he understands that. I don't know if there's some issue beforehand, if it was sprung on him so he wasn't in the best shape, even though Goldberg seems like a guy who's always in shape. I think the difference between having a cardio-based match where you have to do a lot of moving around and running and stuff is probably a lot harder than just the lifting itself. So I'm not sure the situation. I just know that happened. Anyways, Raw ended up being really, really crazy on Monday, and Dolph Ziggler, first I thought Dolph Ziggler was going to be beefing with The Miz at SummerSlam, and then it turns out that it seemed like it was about to be Shawn Michaels, and then all of a sudden Goldberg's music hit, and Goldberg came out, and I was like, wow, what a swerve that was crazy. So now Goldberg's facing Dolph Ziggler, and I don't know what's going on with Dolph at all, because he seems like a guy who would probably do better in another organization at this point, because they just keep burying him deeper and deeper and deeper. But maybe they have something for him at the end of this. He's always been a really good wrestler. He's always a guy that I've wanted to see do good things, because he's good on the mic, he's a good wrestler, he's a good worker, he's a good, he's good at faking shots, so he's real good at all that stuff. So it's just upsetting to see a guy who's that talented be used this way, but that's life sometimes. That's my quote right there. That's life. Anyways, moving on. That's another quote of mine. We have the UFC Fight Night card right in front of me. So the main event is actually Shevchenko versus Carmouche, which I'll get into in a moment. But first, we're going to start at the bottom. I think it's Ozdemir Latifi. Then there's a fight in between those two with guys that a lot of casuals really wouldn't know who they are, so I decided to kind of skip that because I'm not sure how many people actually are into this for the UFC stuff right now. So I'm just trying to keep it so that whoever is watching this will definitely know the names, because there'll be fans that watch the UFC somewhat religiously, and they'll understand more. So then there's that fight. Then there's Vincent Luke versus Mike Perry, which is going to be a crazy, crazy fight. And then it's the Shevchenko versus Carmouche fight. So starting at the bottom, we have Ozdemir versus Latifi. Latifi is one of those odd guys who probably should be fighting at middleweight. He's real big, but he's a really short, jacked guy. Everybody knows one of those dudes. He's really good everywhere. He's got good hands. He's got good submissions, good wrestling. He was on Cormier's team for a long time, so the guy understands him. He actually, when he scored a knockout in his last fight. I'm not gonna rack my brain for it right now. He scored a knockout in his last fight. He begged DC for a shot, and DC was like, "Nah, man. We're not fighting because I'll crush you." Basically, DC probably knows that he's grappled with Latifi before, and he probably knows, going into that he's probably going to win that fight, but I don't really think that's fair. You never know what people are really capable of, especially at that high level when you're talking about top 5. I really think if you look at the divisions, if you don't have any outstanding trait that really separates you from everybody else, that most of the time being wrestling, you're probably looking at anybody in the top 5 being able to win in terms of striking and submissions. But if you have a wrestler who's so much better at wrestling than everybody else, wrestlers tend to win most of the time. Anyways, I do have Latifi winning by decision, unanimous decision. I think that Ozdemir is a really tough guy, and he's got powerful hands. I just don't see him being able to knock out Latifi. Latifi's a tough dude. He's a good grappler, and Ozdemir doesn't seem to have the complete package when it comes to being able to handle everything. But I think that he's not experienced enough. Well, that's the wrong word to say. I think that he's experienced enough. I just don't think that he's taken enough shots that Latifi will be able to knock him out. I don't think Latifi is going to be that effective in striking. He has good striking. He's just not a guy who's going to light you up all day. He tends to land one shot, TKO shots, and then he finishes you there for the most part. Anyways, I have Latifi winning by unanimous decision. It'll probably end up being a grappling match, probably midway through the first round, but we'll see. Sometimes, I usually get a fight or two wrong, so we'll see about that one. The next fight, we have Luke versus Perry, the silent assassin. Luke is an animal. Like, he's such a good striker. He's so underrated. He has a left hand that's up there on McGregor's caliber for how good his left is. He's absolutely amazing. You wouldn't be able to tell by his record, but he's one of those guys where you can't really look at that. Like, I think he lost to Leon Edwards, but Leon Edwards, again, is a fantastic grappler, and that's what happened in that matchup. He ended up losing that matchup because Leon Edwards is a good grappler, and he held him down the whole time. But in the stand-up exchanges, Luke was getting him the entire time. So Perry is a real tough dude. Like, he's real gritty. He's like a Chris Lieben, where he just wants to stand in the pocket and trade with you the entire time. He's super exciting to watch. He lands knockouts. He's tough, but he just doesn't have that complete MMA package. He doesn't have good wrestling. He doesn't have good submissions. We saw him against Cerrone, where Cerrone literally dismantled him on the ground. Like, there was absolutely no competition once it went to the ground, and I don't think Cerrone is that good on the ground. So it speaks volumes for how bad Mike Perry is on the ground. So I think this will end up being a striking exchange primarily the whole time. But Perry tends to be a brawler where, he's a bully. He tries to cut you off on the ring, get you stuck against the cage, or get you stuck against, stuck moving from side to side where he can land his power shots if you're moving left or right. But Luke has great footwork, and his striking is top notch. He has top notch boxing, and his kickboxing is very, very good too. He mixes it up with leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks, everything. The dude is fantastic. And I do see him being able to dismantle Perry based on those traits, because he's going to be able to nullify. Is that the right word? Nullify? Neutralize? We'll say neutralize. He'll be able to neutralize the striking of Perry fairly easily, because the exchanges are going to be in the pocket, and Vincent Luke is going to be moving in and out of the pocket very, very well. So when Perry tries to set up to get those big strikes off in the pocket, you're going to see Luke hitting him with the jabs to get out of there, and the straights coming back into the pocket, and Perry won't be able to land much. I do see it being a landslide victory for Luke, 100%. I have him winning by second round KO. That's when I think it's going to happen. I think Perry's going to go out cold for that fight. The last fight, we have Shevchenko versus Carmouche. This, to me, is not an interesting fight at all. I think that Shevchenko, this is the problem with the girl division, and I keep trying to say this. It's still in the process of getting females who are really good at mixed martial arts. It's not that they're not talented. The females are just as talented, and they're fantastic. And there are some good fighters out there like Nunes, Shevchenko, Cyborg, even Rousey at some point. But they've all been very one-dimensional at one thing. Oh, Jacek is another one. Michelle Watterson. There's been a bunch of good females that stand out. But that's the thing, is that when you've looked at the female divisions, every single time that there's been a new champion, those champions have held the title or looked absolutely crazy good compared to everybody else. Rose Namajunas is another good example of that, where she rose up, pun intended, she rose up, and she ended up getting so good and looking so good against these people. Like, she absolutely decimated Jacek, who absolutely looked dominant, to the point Jacek, after Rousey, ended up looking like a girl who was going to be able to shatter all of the UFC records held by Anderson Silva and GSP and all that stuff. She looked like she was about to shatter them all, and Namajunas literally came out of nowhere and absolutely dismantled her in the first fight, and then the second fight she did the exact same thing, where she was just so good with footwork and striking. And that last fight that she had where she lost and she got knocked out by getting slammed, it was absolutely just a miracle that she lost that fight, because it was crazy how dominant she was from bell to bell up until that moment happened. It was literally 2 slams and it was over, and that was all her opponent had. And, there's obviously a new champion, and I want to see Rose back so bad because she is my favorite fighter, female fighter. Anyways, getting back to it, there's a lot of females who are going to be coming up into the UFC, young girls who have been training at this now because they've been able to watch Rousey from 8-9 years ago and see all these other girls, and they've been training from those moments on, seeing like, oh, females can do MMA, I'm going to get my daughter, I'm going to get my kid, I'm going to do all that stuff. They're going to get them into mixed martial arts, and they're going to be absolute prodigies. And we're going to start seeing that happening shortly with these younger girls coming in and being able to do that. But for right now, we're seeing the lack of depth in all the divisions with these females. So Shevchenko is a good example of this. Shevchenko is fighting Carmouche. Now, Carmouche was the very first title defense that Ronda Rousey had in the UFC, and she destroyed her. And I think that this fight is going to be exactly the same. Now, you could make the argument that Carmouche lost to Rousey because judo beats wrestling. Judo is anti-wrestling. So when you have a person who's such a good judo artist and jiu-jitsu artist, especially with the arm bars, against a wrestler like that, the combination of the two, it spells disaster for a wrestler. And Carmouche was never really that good standing up, and that's how she gets most of her victories, is, by doing a grindy American-style wrestling match on all of her opponents. She was in the military, she's very strong, and that's something. But Shevchenko is the entire fucking package. She has striking, she has grappling, she's got footwork, she's got submissions, she's everything that a fighter needs, and she's so good. And I don't see her losing the title for a while, especially if they keep feeding her people like Carmouche, who in my opinion didn't deserve to be in this title shot in the first place, but it's because of the lack of depth. Anyways, I have Shevchenko winning by the first round, KO. Without a doubt in my mind. I don't think that it could get any crazier other than if Carmouche picks her up and slams her on her head, but I don't see that happening because Shevchenko is an animal. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for watching. If you don't subscribe, share the video, and like it, I'm coming for you. I'm just kidding. But I would appreciate that nonetheless. Thanks, everyone, and have a great night.